Hi, my name is Mark English, and this is my video presentation on the freedom to assemble for Michigan's right to work law. And we're going to be looking at, first, the Boston Tea Party. This is one of the first examples in Michigan history of people assembling, not peacefully though in this case, against the government. And this time it was the British government. And they were showing their displeasure with British taxes at the time. Now, what we're going to look at next is current protest. We've jumped ahead a couple hundred years, but instead of protesting a foreign government like the British at the Boston Tea Party, what we see demonstrating here are Americans protesting their banks and their government for allowing the banks to become as powerful as they are in this. And you can see the 1% signs. I think we all remember that argument from a few years ago. Next, you're also going to see a non-peaceful assembly with Molotov cocktail being thrown. I believe that's somewhere in the Middle East. Well, what we're going to look at now are 4 past precedents dealing with the right to assemble. These 4 past precedents are listed here. They are important to the current protests regarding the Michigan right to work law in that the first one guaranteeing us the right to protest and that the government would protect us if we peacefully protested. The next setup that we could protest on sidewalks and certain roadways in public places. After that, we had the guarantee that if we were to protest peacefully, we could not be shut down by our government, even if they were afraid if we were going to be violent or not. Now we have Michigan's right to work law. Now, for you that don't know, Michigan's right to work law allows union members who do not want to pay union dues to be able to still work in a select industry. This law affects people in such industries as the state government, nurses, and teachers, but those unaffected by it are police workers and firemen. Now, in the next slides, we're going to see the 2 sides to this argument. The first being the Republicans. This group, led by Rick Snyder, and this isn't a generalization of all Republicans, but some, pushed for the right to work legislation and pushed it rather quickly through the Michigan government, as you'll see later on in the program. Then we have the Democrats and the unions who are not generalizing, but are opposed to it. They would like to see the right to work legislation taken off the books here in Michigan and make it so that all members that in select industries have to pay their union dues. And next we're going to look at a little timeline to help set up what's happened in the past couple. Now here's the timeline that we were talking about. In early November 6th to be exact, as many of you may remember too, there was a proposal that we all voted on, or those of us that did vote, that would have prohibited right to work laws in Michigan and had made an amendment to the Michigan Constitution to not allow right to work laws. Well, it was not voted favorably in the state of Michigan and it was not passed. So then soon after, in mid-December, Governor Rick Snyder and Republican members of the House and Senate had brought up these right to work acts and within a week had put them on the books in Michigan. Well, this, as you'll see in a second, had sparked large protests in Michigan. In these protests, there were 3,000 union workers and more than 12,000 people present. So many teachers, hundreds to be exact, from local schools had taken off that day from school that they had to shut down the schools to join the protest. This protest had a large effect on the state capitol, and the police unconstitutionally tried to shut down the protests at one point. They had taken it shortly after to court and had reopened the city to protests of Lansing. As you'll see in a second, there were now 2 sides to try and fix this. On January 28th, Governor Rick Snyder, under pressure from the unions, brought the right to work legislation to the Supreme Court to check if it was unconstitutional. Now, seeing as that a majority of our Michigan Supreme Court is Republican, and that the vacant 7th seat, which is soon to be filled by Governor Rick Snyder, is most likely to be filled by a Republican that will share his views, I feel Governor Rick Snyder may get his way as far as seeing if this is constitutional or not. On February 11th, the union had brought to the Michigan state courts to check the constitutionality of these amendments. Now, I don't think they're going to have anything resolved since Governor Snyder has already brought it to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court has also said that it may wait to see the rulings of the lower courts. Though, I don't think anyone will see a ruling by March 27th when these right to work legislation goes into action. Now what we're going to look at are the 2 different approaches that the media can take when handling these issues. The first being unsupportive to the unions. Now, as you'll see in a second, these kind of show the unions as violent.
One union boss even telling lawmakers who support the measure that, quote, "We are going to take you on and take you out." Nearby, an angry confrontation breaking out. Union protesters apparently storming the tent of the local chapter of conservative group Americans for Prosperity, tearing it down and then going after some right-to-work supporters. Let's watch this.
He put his hands right on his stomach. Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. I wasn't talking to you.
The next media we will be looking at is attacking Governor Rick Snyder. As you'll see, they get a little in the face of Governor Rick Snyder, which I think is improper.
Actually, I've never said unions are bad for business, and I don't believe this is actually anti-union. If you look at it, I believe this is pro-worker. Because the way I view it is workers now have freedom to choose.
Hang on a second. Are you serious?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you serious? This is not anti-union.
Yes.
This actually, at its core, undermines the ability for unions to organize. So you can make many arguments you like to say it's not anti-union.
This does not.
I would not go so far as to say what you just said, which is that this helps unions. I mean, it undermines unions' ability to
Now I'd just like to give a few of my closing remarks and try and analyze the right-to-work protests under some of the First Amendment rights that I had outlined earlier. Now, as we saw that the people were still allowed to assemble in Lansing and within the streets of Lansing, on the sidewalks of Lansing, as we talked about. Whether they had gotten permits or not, I don't know. That I could not find through research, but I'm sure Lansing had, as I've shown earlier, had permitted them. Now, what was unconstitutional, and according to the previous judicial findings that I'd found, was that they had shut them down for a short period of time because they thought they were going to be violent or they feared violence, and the government wasn't allowed to do that. Just from a personal standpoint now, I believe that even though these protests brought a lot of attention to right-to-work laws in Michigan, I don't feel they were immediately effective, but maybe in the future they will be. And if you have questions, please ask them now. Here are just a few cool pictures of different presidents that I thought were cool and were patriotic and First Amendment-ish. And thank you for paying attention, and have a good day.